much better. I thought it was on before. Anyway, good morning again.
Good morning.
I heard an ad on the football game when the Patriots were playing last week, and it was a strong man who came on really strong and said, "I am here to kick acid. If you buy this pill, I can turn your stomach into sweetness." Now, I know strong men are popular, and I'm not that strong, and I'm also not that gender. So I'd like to help you with acid, but not kick it, and not make you buy a pill, but just sweeten things. I have hope to offer as a gift, grace to offer as a gift, and by the way, you can't buy these things anyway, so you may as well not try. When I go places I've never been before, to talk to people I've never talked to before, I like to tell you who I really am. I am Donna Eleanor Osterhout, daughter of Eleanor Clara Osterhout and Donald Campbell Osterhout, born in Kingston, New York in 1947, into a family that was troubled. And we were part of the Missouri Synod Lutheran Church. And one night, as usual, my father was beating my mother up, because sometimes that's what strong men do, to show that they're really weak. They use violence against others. And I was scared to death. I was scared for my baby brother and my baby sister. And somehow I knew how to work that Rolodex my mother had and to find church, CHURCH, EV6 4100. Remember when numbers were only 5 or whatever they were? And I called Pastor Whitty. And Pastor Whitty came in his black cassock, and he came to the door and he said, "Stop that. Don't do it again." Now, he did not stop the beating, but the fact that he came changed my life forever. I started baptizing my dolls and giving them communion. My grandmother said girls can't be ordained in the Lutheran Church, and I said, "Watch me." Then I realized that I had been taught something, and that was to understand the Lord's Prayer, "Our Father, who art in heaven." And I started adopting surrogate parents, pastors, teachers, coaches, anybody that felt like there was an adult in the room. And that strategy turned me into a lover of church. I'd be nothing without it. And I know a lot of people have picked up the phone and there wasn't somebody on the other end who showed up and at least tried. I know that. I always thought it was just our family, but it's not just our family. It's a lot of people who are so scared that they hurt others, who are so weak that they can't help but get angry and have anger management problems, which of course they try to solve with antacids or things you can buy, when all the time there's something free that can save us and make us genuinely safe. So that's who I am, a pastor who loves church and who also knows that church is going out of business. I don't completely know why. I know it's a combination of spiritual injury, moral injury, disappointment with our leaders, and soccer on Sundays. Right? It's some combination of the change in the two-career family. By the way, I used to be in favor of it. I'm not sure I am anymore. Our children don't have time to come and get the free gifts we have to give. I also know that many congregations have committed suicide. They've stolen the church from their grandchildren by insisting on the right way to do things, by saying things like, could you buy me some youth? Find them. Get me some youth in here. We need to feel better about sitting in our empty pews. They offered younger people high chairs instead of seats at the table. We offered younger people Bach instead of Springsteen. We stuck to 10 o'clock in the morning on Sundays as though God could only be found then. And all of these things, of course, bothered me terribly in my heart as well as in my profession. So some churches did commit suicide. Others just got behind on maintenance that they just couldn't afford. And still others, like you, have embraced the future, have a pastor who knows how to deal with interruptions during the moment of silence. That's pretty good, right? That's the idea, is learn how to deal with interruptions. Things are not the way they used to be. So congratulations for all that you're doing here, and we'll talk more about Bricks and Mortars, an organization that tries to help most churches stay in that third category, because the first category is in hospice, and we need to be very gentle and careful, just like we would be with Grandma if she were in hospice. The second category may or may not be able to make it, and the people who know how to deal with interruptions and how to try things and do things differently are going to make it. Jesus said, I'm going to tear this building down and rebuild it in 3 days. Death and resurrection are a normal cycle for the human and for the human's institutions. Not all churches need to survive. Frankly, a lot of them need to be repurposed with mission-consistent things. Our organization that we founded in New York realized, it's called Bricks and Mortars, realized that the developers had figured out what was going on before we had, and were buying up churches and creating luxury housing in them. What are you supposed to do with that? That's not mission consistent when there are so many other good community uses that a deceased building and a movement that was done could do. So that is what we do, is try to repurpose things and bring some hope to the situation. And we do it very often in the name of my neighbor, Gary. You probably haven't met Gary. But somebody has to tell Gary that he can no longer grow tomatoes in his backyard because he's been planting them there for 22 years, and the trees have grown up, and there's not enough sun for the tomatoes to grow. And he does keep planting them, and they don't grow, and he complains. But things change. Things change. And it's all right that they change. Gary is a wonderful man, still works in a contracting business, can't hear much. And when somebody changed the zoning in our neighborhood to have 2 family dwellings instead of just 1 family dwelling, Gary was the first person knocking on everybody's door saying, isn't that wonderful? Longest resident in the neighborhood. But his tomatoes are a problem. And that's the kind of spirit I would like to give to churches in Category 2, the maybes, and churches in Category 3, the sure, you're going to do it. We'd like to imagine a future that was bustling, that actually served the community that has changed, that could grow tomatoes in the front yard instead of the backyard, that could think about ways to worship all the time. 5 o'clock, 10 o'clock, Tuesday o'clock. At my church in New York City, we had 5 congregations in the same building: Jews, Muslims, people of color who were queer, our basically white organization, and a harm reduction congregation on Sunday night where people who were still using could come. We also had morning glories, 8 a.m. on Sunday mornings. On Wednesday mornings, they would come and dance sober. These were people in AA who still wanted to dance to that awful loud music. And they came and paid $20, 8 to 10 a.m. We had tons of immigrants being resourced by tons of well-trained volunteers. We did what we called hyper use of sacred space, and we started to do it to make money. Because we were in category 2. That building had gone way beyond us, our capacity to do it. So we started it to make money, and then we realized that we were a little bit like that antacid advertisement, that we needed them more than they needed us. And then we had to get down and understand that the communities who were using our buildings weren't tenants, because we were all renters in God's house. And so we got into this notion of who's the host and who's the guest here. And we put the people who were our major tenants, so-called, on the board to help us figure out what to do next with the whole building. And long story, that process of hyper-use of sacred space, first as the doves in the temple, and then as a free gift to the community where they had some ownership over it as well, that process tipped the congregation to people under 40 and the board to people under 40, and, grew the congregation a lot. When we figured out how to really follow the gospel, which is about how we are all guests here, not hosts here, that Jesus literally at the communion table is both a host and a guest, that following Jesus with the free gifts and giving away space for free allowed us to do the very thing we wanted to do in the first place. You can have what you can let go of. Gary had to figure out how to grow his tomatoes in the front yard. If you look at your bulletin today, you'll see that it's a picture of a place, an artwork that is actually a chapel. It's in Austin, Texas, and it is called Totem. And Totem exists to show that the light, so see all those rainbow circles there? They're little windows. The artist argues that the light can never come into any window the same way. And there's a recording of where the light was yesterday, where the light will be tomorrow. And you know that in your own life too. The earth is not going to stay the same. We gray hairs are not always going to be the majority in these buildings. Because if that happens, you know what happens next. The light is not going to always be the same. Alleluia. Alleluia. I will tear this building down and build it up in 3 days. And it's going to be great. It's going to be great. Why is it going to be great? Because people will get something free to sweeten their stomach. Something free that they don't have to buy. That's right there. Now, some of you probably are thinking, yeah, I misplaced my hope. I can't find it. Did somebody find it for me? It's right there. It's in your pocket. Do you ever tell your husband your keys are in your pocket? What we need is right there, already, waiting for us to receive it. So we're going to talk later, those who want to, about ways and means and how you do this thing. But it's really about getting into the incarnational theology that is our source and base, the melody of body and spirit, the Christ con carne that we'll celebrate pretty soon in Advent. Jesus in the meat, incarnación. Jesus is in this space, and that light, by the power of the Holy Spirit, is changing all the time. It won't be the same next week. And you can still grow tomatoes and eat them and slice them. Enjoy the Pablo Neruda poem, too. And if somebody calls you, pick up the phone, show up, offer a free gift. Amen.